everybody, like, well, let's just say it, the lies of Iraq. All of the conservatives that flocked around George W. Bush when deficits were exploding, when the national debt was exploding, when they were passing a $7 trillion expansion of Medicare and they weren't paying for a dime of it with Medicare Part D. All of these things happened, and if you crossed Republicans and if you crossed the president at that time, you weren't considered a conservative. Of course, George Bush got out of office, and then suddenly it became very in vogue to say, oh, he was a big spender, he had a Wilsonian foreign policy, and we're never going to do that again. Of course, they're doing that again, but what John is so disturbing is that the trend has repeated itself time and time again, and Trump will be called out by history. Americans do always do the right thing in the end after exhausting all other possibilities. The question is why Republicans aren't expediting the process and why they don't trust their constituents enough to go to them and say, you know what, I voted with the president on taxes, but these tariffs, they're bad for America. You know what, I'm with the president on regulatory reform, regulatory relief for small business owners across America. But when he goes after Amazon, he's acting more like a dictator that's trying to crush a political opponent instead of the president of the United States that works within a system of checks and balances in an economy that owes more to Milton Friedman and Frederick Hayek than it does to Lenin and Marx. They could say that in town hall meetings and Americans would follow them.
Yeah. Can I just say something on the analogy? I think, well, on the front end, don't you want to be Margaret Chase Smith, who in 1950 opposed Joe McCarthy and not in 54 when everybody else got there? You want to be in the conversation going forward where you were on the right side of things early enough to make a difference. So that's one thing. The second thing, on an analogous moment where presidents have tried to put fast ones past us, I think there's honest disagreement about the run-up to the war in Iraq. What there's not honest disagreement about is we have Lyndon Johnson on tape talking to Richard Russell in late 1963 and 64 saying, I just don't know how we win this thing. And then 55,000 American deaths later, more than a decade later, Gerald Ford pulls them out.
Yeah, in fact, John, you have Lyndon Johnson saying that we can't win the war in 63, 64, that it would be a mess. You have JFK in 1963 saying they hate us over there. There's no way we can win that war. But if I pull them out now before the election, I'm not going to get reelected. And in Iraq, I mean, listen, I make mistakes all the time. We as a country make mistakes all of the time. Mistake wasn't, well, it was a mistake that we went into Iraq, but, you know, around 70% of Americans and just about every major Democrat that would run for president over the next decade supported going into Iraq. Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, John Edwards, Lieberman, all the people in the tickets in 2000 and 2004.
Joe Biden.
But the question is, how do you react? How do you react after you know you've made that mistake? Well, a lot of Americans, after they understood they made the mistake in Iraq in 2003, turned against the war in 2004, 2005. People started turning against the war in Vietnam, you know, a couple of years after that. The question is, Willie, when are these Republicans who thought Donald Trump was going to sit in the White House and just be a stooge and sign all of their bills? Because that's what so many leaders said to me. Listen, you know what, he's just going to tweet, he's going to make a lot of noise, but we're going to pass all the legislation and he'll just sit down there and happily sign it. When are they going to realize that that's terribly backfired, and he's destroying American conservatism. He's destroying the Republican Party. He's destroying constitutional norms. When are they going to say that?
I don't know. We asked that question yesterday. We've been asking that question for a year and a half now since the Trump presidency began. What is the cost to a Republican, as John said, to be out front of this, step forward, and when they see something they believe is un-American, when they see something they believe is not conservative, when they see something that's bad for the country, say something. There are people doing it. We talk about Senator Ben Sasse. Bob Corker has done it over this administration. But you haven't seen people who are core conservatives come out and condemn things that are simply not conservative, and in some cases